You're listening to Get to Know World of Warships, a podcast hosted by Bogsy and Synpax, produced by TNG The New Guys.
So, Bogsy, how was your flight to St. Petersburg? I know you were, for some reason, something happened with your tickets, and you ended up back in coach. But I have to say, the caviar in first class was on point.
Yes, well, it was delightful because I got an entire row of 3 seats all to myself, and so I literally just laid down with my head on the windowsill, and it was delightful.
That's good. That's good. A little jet lag on my part, but I think it was worth the trip for our very special guest. Oh, why don't you introduce him?
I'm so excited. Well, we've had some very special guests on this program before, but I think this might be a new high. So nobody wants to hear us talk. Why don't we just go right ahead and introduce our guest? Our guest today is none other than Sub Octavian from Wargaming. Hello, Sub Octavian.
Hey guys, and just a disclaimer for your audience, these 2 gentlemen are not holding me in the basement, and they do not make me say things. I'm entirely like on my own will, and I'm happy to be here.
Now, originally the plan was for an abduction, but he was cool with it. It's like, we pulled up with the van, we had the waterboarding all set up back at the hotel, and he was just, no, it's fine, guys. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. We don't have to coerce. And I was like, oh, okay, it makes our job easier. So let's get to the questions, Bogsy.
Let's do it. Let's get to the questions. I got the first question. The first question is, Sub Octavian, who in the hell are you? That is the question. I know you've done plenty of interviews over the past, and as part of our research for this program, we did go over them. But for our audience, who may not be as familiar as we now are, can you tell us, please, a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm the famous dude who, is really talented. My talent is that I can catch the full broadside of Shimakaze torpedoes while mindlessly sailing my Yamato, and I've been doing this for 5 years, very consistently. Yep. Also, I work in World of Warships team as executive producer, and actually, the scope of the work, it's. The higher you get, the more you work in the team, the more and more general scope of work and responsibility is. I would say the general direction of my work has not really changed since I joined the team as a community manager. I want this game to be amazing as possible and as many players as possible to enjoy it. But unlike community manager, I'm now working on more general level, which is actually a bit sad things to say, because usually I don't get to do like the chat we're having now, for example. That's not my job anymore. And I need to spend time on management duties, like just facilitating the workflow between different teams, because our team is pretty big and it's distributed across the world, picking up the right people for the various tasks and so on and so forth. And basically, when you are a producer, the general idea is that every issue is your issue, every problem is your problem. So basically, you need to jump on the problems and help to solve them.
So if, as the executive producer, it sort of sounds like you're saying that the buck stops with you. Is that correct?
Excuse me?
Oh,
do you think he knows that idiom? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that's probably an American idiom that might not be familiar to Russians. It sort of means that, like, all things fall on your shoulders at the end. If they don't get solved by people who work for you, people who you assign to tasks, that it eventually will fall in your lap and you have to deal with it at some point. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure, but obviously I'm just the part of management team, so I don't work alone on all issues. Obviously, I do help in a lot of areas, but I have I'd say that my scope kind of still shifts towards game development and community strategy. So, for example, I don't do marketing a lot. I don't do monetization a lot. So I do have some scope. But yeah, basically, if anything is working wrong, or if there is any complication, I'm still usually involved.
So, Sub, I want to make it perfectly clear for the audience, though, that the person we're talking to is the person that is ultimately in charge of World of Warships. Obviously somebody else owns the company. There are other people, quote unquote, the ownership. But in terms of making the decisions that, for better or worse, that we encounter in game, ultimately at the end of the day, it's your call, or it's your call 99% of the time.
That's not true at all. It doesn't work like this, to be honest. I would say that I am invested into maybe 95% of decisions being made, but it's not. We don't have a single person normally who makes the call. We have the management team, and we have different people of different specialties there. And I mean, decisions are usually they're collective decisions. So I do have a say in most of the decisions, but we don't have we don't practice one-person decisions normally in the team, and we don't consider it a good practice usually.
Is there not one person ultimately who is in charge, of World of Warships?
Of course, on the company level, yes. But I heard in several conversations things like, "Oh, they nerfed this ship because the management told them to do so." But actually, it doesn't work like this. We have the studio, we have development, publishing team, we have marketing people working. Most of people working here in the studio. We have, of course, colleagues in regions. There are, several hundred people working on the game. We have the leadership of these teams, so to say, and these people usually decide everything about the game, not the higher manager who represents the game on company level. So that's a bit of different story. What I'm saying is that our company CEO, he doesn't tell us actually what ships to nerf or buff, or what maps to do, or what ship lines to prioritize. The structure works as that the people who do the most work on the game, they are also get to make most of the decisions, if I may say so. We've been trusted by the company to create World of Warships, to develop it, and to sustain it as we think the best way for the game.
Right. So, you said something a minute ago that was very interesting to both of us, which was that you came out of community management. Now, like I mentioned to you before we started, I'm only maybe 7-8 months into sort of, I want to say the upper end of the World of Warships community. I started playing competitively when I joined Synpax's clan, and we started working on the podcast together, and I really got a crash course in game history, and as well as sort of the upper echelon of what goes on. So if you came from community management, forgive my ignorance, but did you do something sort of along the lines of what our friend Happafader does, where you interact with the community, or can you give me a little idea of what it was that you did, and how did you have to kill a whole bunch of people to get up like you do in American businesses, or how did that work?
I think yes, I was working on something very close to what Happafader does, but with the difference that I was regional community manager for Russia and CIS, so it was different region first, with some nuances. And second is that when I joined the team as a community manager, World of Warships was in closed alpha. It was actually not even in closed alpha, it was on friends and family stage. So a lot of my duties were associated not just with community management, but with the alpha test, with preparation and organization of an alpha test. But other than that, yes, that was community management. And then I, in a while, I started to, I had a task to create super test for the game, and I created super test structure. Obviously, I let it go a couple of years ago, more than a couple of years. But for a while, I was working as external testing manager. So I was handling tests. I was also writing patch notes. Actually, I was doing a lot of work. It sounds crazy because I was managing Express. I was creating patch notes, scripts for our videos, game-related videos, and stuff like that. And then with time, we came to the idea of creating all this, modern things we have now, like DevBlock, like CC program. I mean, global CC program, not the one that we had from the start. And to work on such things, basically, I've branched to like separate team. We created a team which was called Game Analytics back then, but it doesn't actually matter how it was called. And then we were responsible for basically informing players about everything we do, and informing developers about everything players think. And I exclude things like surveys or mostly server statistics. I'm talking about core community, about forums, Reddit, Discourse, anywhere people are talking about our game. So that was my third position. And then I became executive producer, but I think I did not kill anyone on the way up.
Do you wish that you had?
That depends on. No. Actually, no. But that's just because at this point that would be just boring.
We have to be careful
already.
Here, Bob. I don't believe there's a Fifth Amendment in Russia, so he can't.
Is that right?
He can't just duck it so easily. So let's speak a little bit more broadly. Russia has a long celebrated history of art in different mediums over many centuries. Even here in the U.S., we grew up reading writers like Dostoevsky, Anton Chekhov, Tolstoy, Nabokov. And while many may not recognize the names, many will immediately recognize the composition after just a few bars of composers like Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, and Stravinsky. Ballet originated in Italy and France, but it was mastered in Russia, from Anna Pavlova, whom the Australians named a dessert after when she was doing her world tour, to Diana Vishneva, whom I have a signed photo of, and I really regret that I will probably never get to see her dance at the Mariinsky. Now, Bogsy and I joke, we're half joking. World of Warships, to my eyes, first and foremost, and this isn't a bad thing, I see it as essentially a casino. I love casinos. In the United States, customer service in casinos is the best you're going to get anywhere in the world, and the experience of a casino, that feeling, that high, and also depending on the games you play, there's a lot of strategy involved, and I kind of get that level of engagement. But I also sort of wonder, is this not an art form? And do you consider World of Warships to be part of that legacy of Russian creators sharing and spreading incredible art throughout the world?
I guess there are kind of two subtopics here about is it form of art or not, and about is it Russian art or not. I think that in terms of being a Russian product, like on the one hand, sure, World of Warships is probably, I'm not sure, it's one of the most, or maybe even the most successful PC games made in Russia, which is cool because Russia is not exactly the center of video games industry, and the fact that we created the product in our country, which is played worldwide, is kind of cool. It's a big honor for us. But we're also a multicultural company, and while yes, sure, we have the studio in St. Petersburg. Anyway, World of Warships is the product of collaboration from diverse different team in different territories. So, I mean, for example, I definitely speak English more than Russian at works many days. That's just an example. So But by the way, it's pretty amazing part of the job because I really learned a lot about different cultures, different people for this 5 years. But the fact is that it's not purely Russian product; it's global product. And as for the art, I do believe that video games are a form of art. But I wouldn't compare. Like our game is like you said, casino. I would say for me it's like quality entertainment TV series, but it's not like it's a good entertaining Netflix show. It's not monumental movie, you know, which defines the era, which like defines generation or something like this. So I don't think we can't compare. I don't think we can compare fairly this modern entertainment media, which most of the video games are, to be honest. There are some games which probably are closer to books and movies, but they are not that fundamental forms like literature, music. So
it's less the King's Speech and more the Tiger King.
you know, a couple of weeks ago, I didn't know what Tiger King is. But I watched actually, I think 4 or 5 episodes. Now I know that, so I have the context, and yeah, this is why I was laughing because I actually watched this. Yeah. So to be honest, when I watched Tiger King, the first 2 episodes, I was watching with my girlfriend, and we were like, okay, it's a good quality fiction. It's really nice. And then I went to Wiki to Google something, and I realized that it's a true story. It's a documentary, and I was like, what?
That's
really?
That's just life in America, man. Day to day.
I've spent my last trip in America. I spent a month in Austin. I didn't notice anything resembling Tiger King, but okay, maybe I was in the wrong place.
We can discuss whether or not Austin's really America, but that's another podcast. So.
Yeah, maybe.
Something which happens in the center of Two Brothers map, for example, is usually resembling Tiger King, I think. So yeah, but it's not King's Speech, I think.
Exactly. But I guess back to the Russian angle, though, is to me, I play many different games. There's certain aspects about playing World of Warships that to me just have just an aura of what I would perceive as Russian culture. And how do you think, if at all, Russian culture influences wargaming's business operations, PR, and customer service, both for good or for bad?
It's a tough question from the start, because for me personally, at least, it's not easy to define Russian business or Russian culture exactly for the purposes of our conversation. So, for example, if I'll talk about cafes and restaurants, for my personal experience, being in America, I think I've been to America 5 times or something. So from my personal experience, on average, the American service in cafes is better than in Russia. But then, on the other hand, in Russia, I've been living in Russia for my whole life, and I've been in the US only to 5 cities. And I know that in Russia, the situation can be absolutely different depending on the city or the district or the exact place. I can't fairly compare that. So if I talk about online service, a year ago, I'm not going to name things here, but a year ago, I was absolutely shocked in a negative way by the customer support quality from one of the biggest US game industry companies, and it was about I bought a boxed game for full price, some super duper huge edition for a lot of money, especially if we translate dollars to rubles. And at the same time, I experienced shockingly bad customer service there, like shockingly bad. On the other hand, I've been buying some hobby supplies for my tabletop games from an American online store, and the service there was amazing, like absolutely amazing, which I would call super quality service. And the same thing is here in Russia. I think some companies, they prioritize their service, they try to do better, they do their job better, and some don't. I mean, I switched banks and mobile operators because of the service level. So even in my personal matters, I prefer to evaluate the culture not as Russian versus American versus British versus whatever, but as like it fits me or it doesn't fit me without the attached nationality, because it can be so different. And if I may say so, for World of Warships, our original teams, they are experts in their own right. There is no separation. It doesn't give us perfection, of course. I know that I've personally dived into several customer support incidents with American players or European players. So, of course, the screw-ups, they happen. But I think we established a structure with dedicated regional experts who mostly facilitate community, customer support, PR, business development, marketing for their region. So they are working in regional office, they are mostly locals, and they bring their culture aboard. And like these experts, they don't report to us directly. They report to the regional head, regional director, who is in charge of huge part of what happens in each specific region. And what I personally like in how we built this team is that we have a lot of horizontal connections. So anyone can make a suggestion, and it's not rare to see Chris Santos, for example, you know him, it's a European lead community manager, discussing their gameplay idea with development director, for example, original producer, for example, being the main owner of some global project. So I'm sorry for taking that long, but I think that cultural background really matters in our internal process. There are several hundred people working on the game worldwide. They all come from very different cultures, time zones, languages. It creates a lot of difficulties, challenges, of course. And sure, I can say that on average, we can confirm that Russians are blunt. For example, they tend to be more direct and blunt. Or you can say maybe I don't mean any disrespect, but we can say that Americans are sensitive, like more sensitive on average. But these statements, they may have some truth behind them, but to become an integral part of the team, as if you work in wargaming, or to make a good game and provide good service, you need to learn not to generalize too much and go deeper to each particular person problem, to each particular customer support ticket, and see what you can do, what you cannot do, what was wrong, what was right. So nuances, there are a lot of nuances there.
Right. I would say, I'm not on the development team. I don't hear the conversations about, how to monetize ABC. Myself and I guess almost all of our listeners, we experience the corporate culture of wargaming through customer service interactions and through the public pronouncements, the things like the dev blog, purely the public side of things. And you hit on it, and I don't disagree at all. There's a bluntness, I think, to the communication that is just there's the underlying Russian culture is a little bit palpable. Some people like customer service that's a little bit more coddling. I actually kind of prefer the no BS angle. And there's also, we don't really do politics in our clan or on the podcast, but there's I can sense there's a slight political difference between dealing, what the experience is as customers from wargaming versus, say, an American company or, let's say, a Western company. And for my personal preferences, I kind of like the Russian way myself, insofar as that certain decisions that get made. And again, we don't want to get political here, but if you know what you're getting into, I think people should have that expectation. This is a company that is fundamentally Russian, and that has sometimes some drawbacks, a little bit blunt, but also some upside, and that basically maybe a little bit less BS. And with that, I guess we'll move on from our Russian segment of this podcast.
I would just add, because it caught my attention, about customer support particularly. I know we had quite a lot of cock-ups, but we're trying to improve, and we try to actually, usually, especially the bigger product you have, the bigger company you have, it's almost inevitable that your customer support will work more and more like a machine, less and less personal, just because of sheer volumes and because of the expectations of efficiency and so on and so forth. So what we try to do and I wouldn't say that we've been doing this overly successful, but I think we do have some improvements there, is we try to still maintain the more personalized approach to the ticket. We try to reduce the amount of ping pongs, when you get some question and they send you there back and forth. It still happens. We're still reviewing this. We actually dedicated more resources to improve the situation this year, and I hope you will notice. I hope you will not have any customer support questions in the first place, because it obviously means something is wrong with the game or something is not working. But if you do have, I hope you notice some improvements with time. So even though we're a big game, we try to make customer support like more personal, warm. I don't know. Home feeling way, but it's not entirely possible. But we're trying to do this. I
have more than my share of tickets that are open. Many, not necessarily because of game problems, but because just part of the reason I have so many tickets is partially because of how accommodating I know that the customer service can be, and that something that I think is rare to other games is that if you let's say you decided to get rid of your Belfast 2 years ago or something like that, you can actually open up a trouble ticket, and if you've got the doubloons or the credits, you can reverse that. If you decide to get rid of your Enterprise, when the rework happened, you can actually ask customer service to reverse that. And so port reversals is, and usually the trouble tickets are answered within hours, if not a day or so. So I honestly, I think customer service, whatever you've been doing, at least from my limited experiences, has certainly been working in terms of, it's actually pretty solid compared to other gaming. I'm just going to say another gaming company whose initials are E and A. I couldn't imagine getting this level of customer support from them.
We'll let you all figure out who that is on your own.
Please, let's stop there, because I still have PTSD from trying to launch Battlefront 2 when I bought it, when it was released. I actually managed to do it after several months, but yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Yeah,
they do have a live chat, but it's very interesting when they ask you for some information and you need to reload your PC to provide this information, because you need to do some logs and stuff and some stuff in BIOS, and then you reload and there's an entirely different person talking to you in the chat, and he asks all the questions over and over again. And because you were disconnected from the chat because we waited for too long. I love this.
Yeah,
My experience was with the SimCity Online that they released, I think, in 2011 or so, and they pre-sold a game based on a specific drop sync agent sort of composition for how they were going to blend SimCity and The Sims, and then they released the game after everyone's paid for it, and it doesn't have that anymore because it was too complicated and eating up too much computational power. And they just tried to pretend as if nothing had happened, and everyone wanted their money back, and they just sort of went, no.
I have a suspicion why it's happening, just because the sheer size of this company and sheer amount of products, and I can suppose how they try to optimize all this stuff with customer support. We're lucky because we're not small, but we're not overly big. We don't have 100 games, and we have dedicated customer support team which services only our game. It used to be different, by the way, but we changed that, and to our pleasure, it really helped. Because now there's people, their main, their thoughts and their expertise lies, it's connected with our game and our game only, not like tanks or other wargaming titles. Having dedicated team working on this is always beneficial. I really doubt that in EA they have dedicated people for each game, and I can understand why, to be honest. But yeah, let's probably move on from this.
Sure, yeah. Okay. So in that case, I think that leads perfectly into our next question, which is sort of about the response from the community, from the Warships community in the public forums and in other formats. And as you may be fully aware, there is a lot of anti-wargaming antagonism that happens in those forums, and it sounds like you oftentimes are the one where that falls at your feet. So I'm kind of curious as to why you think that is, and I guess what do you do about it? What can be done about it? How do you take that in, process it, and do something about it?
Yeah, as I noticed, definitely.
Okay.
I think it's still a combination of reasons or factors. I don't think we can objectively count all of them, but I would probably outline the main ones. I think that first we need to name it first, and I want to say it up front that sometimes we just do mistakes, and some of the negativity can always be attributed to us, just to our decisions, right? Because sometimes you make wrong decisions, or your decisions are not working as you hoped. And in terms of when we do something wrong, it's like what can be done? Well, we need to validate this and either fix it or make it a lesson for the future. And still, we cannot please everyone. But I think that some part of negativity can always be attributed to our own decisions and our own work. On the other hand, I would say that the game is pretty established. It's been 4 years, and it's been even more from the testing period. So we have very active core community. There are a lot of people still playing from beta test. Of course, it's not the overwhelming majority, but it's a very solid core players who've been with us since beta. And again, I named this the first point just to make it absolutely clear that I do acknowledge that some of the negativity is always, and maybe some big part of negativity is always attributed to us. But I also think that I've been playing online games, many different online games for as long as I can remember, and I really struggle to find a popular online game which doesn't have to deal with this problem, because, and I know this as a player from different games, the more you play, actually the more critical you can be, the more annoyed you can be because of some issues which may not be as noticeable for newer players so in the game, because you get to know how it works, and sometimes you get just tired of playing one game. So I think there is this factor as well. Just the age of our game plays some role. And the last, I would say, is just a very Captain Obvious thing, but I still think it's important that despite of us having issues and having to deal with some challenges, I think people still tend to be more vocal about things they dislike. It's a common sense thing. It's confirmed by many cases, not just in our game, I think, but highlighting negative stuff is a well-established trend in media, in gaming media, and social media. So in wargaming we have let me tell you a short story to illustrate this. It's just a very minor example, but still, in wargaming studio here in St. Petersburg, we have a project which is called Wargaming Academy. We accept students for free. Each year we teach them some of the tricks and nuances of game development in different forms. So there are people who teach them game design, programming, art, project management, and these students, they are split into groups. They prepare their own game projects during the, let's say, year. It's actually less than a year, but whatever. They're preparing their own games, basically, or game drafts, and being evaluated. And I participated, I think, 2 or 3 times there in terms of community management, community strategy. And I always have students, full room of students, and I ask them, please raise your hands if you ever went to forums and thanked developers for good game you enjoyed. And usually out of like 30 people, maybe 1 or 2 hands are raised. And then I ask, okay, and then please raise a hand if you ever went to forums to criticize the devs or bash them or complain about things you don't like about the game. And then I have 15 or 20 hands raised. Right. It's just an illustration, but it's also a factor. And again, please, I know, like it can be it's very dangerous argument, because you can always slip to the fact that, okay, the game is perfect, these people are just haters. No, I don't think like this. But I still need to keep validating the feedback and keep remembering that yes, people tend to be more vocal about things they dislike, and they rarely thank us for things they like, actually.
Certainly. It's so funny because that's such a great visual of talking to a room of people who are developing games, but also people who probably play games, and asking them how many of you have ever thanked, have gone on forums and thanked a game creator for that. But then I bet if you had, subsequently asked how many of you have paid game developers in a free-to-play game, I'll bet you money that at least 25 out of those 30 people would also raise their hands, which in a way is a form of thanking a game developer by saying, hey, I've appreciated what you're doing, here's my hard-earned money. But it's just not really a part of it to go into a forums and say, thank you for all this, whatever, this fun that I've had, these relationships I've made through the community, what have you. It's that takes the form of money, whereas criticism takes the form of, I would assume also that a game company would probably prefer criticism to come in the form of, hey, voice your opinions on it, but stay with us, keep playing, and if you enjoy it, keep spending money, just because that's sort of the relationship that happens. But I just think that's very interesting. I'm now picturing Sub-Octavian the teacher.
I didn't picture myself as well, but it happens at some point. But I think we cannot do much with the fact that our game is established and we have core community. It's a good problem to have, when you have very passionate core community which plays your game. It's a good problem to have. It's not a problem at all, to be honest. It's just something you need to factor in. And about people being vocal. But as for listening to players, I think the main thing we can do is to keep this steady workflow for validating topics. And I know that I want to outline keeping it steady because I know that there's a lot of things we did for good, like a lot of improvements or fixes that community wanted to. They took much, much longer than expected, for example. Or sometimes they are taking not just a lot of time, but sometimes they turn out to be not as big of a fixes or as substantial as people hoped for example. So it may have took us a long time to buff German battleships to be more enjoyable. Or, for example, Puerto Rico was a disaster in terms of community perception. But yeah, and we learned from this, and I think Odin event is massively better. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's massively better. So I think you need just to keep challenging yourself, to keep working and acknowledging the fact that sometimes it took more time. Right. As for complaining, technically, I think that when people say something like this ship is a piece of shit, or some other people say like this ship is extremely weak and underwhelming, technically, I think by the community managers or by whoever is sorting out the feedback, such comments would be validated the same way. But I still believe that being civil is not a bad thing, to be honest. In terms of tone of communications, I always want everyone to be mature and respectful, and I want it especially, I understand this personally, because I slipped several times myself.
I think we all do, right?
and each time I regretted about this. Huh. And I can understand that why people being so passionate sometimes, because World of Warships is one of their main hobbies. But these people should also remember, and I really want them to remember this, or think about it as at least, that for the team, for the overwhelming majority of people I know and work here with, World of Warships is very personal too, because it's a huge part of our lives. I mean, I can't imagine myself not doing game development, not doing this job at this point. We're passionate at this, and we are sometimes overinvested in our work, which means that we kind of want the same thing, but maybe from different angles.
Right. Well, that's before I throw this back to Syntax for the next topic, which actually I think is gonna. Since you mentioned the Puerto Rico and you mentioned specifically things that you guys have learned, and thank you for admitting to us that there are things that you guys have acknowledged were not the way you wanted it to go. We'll get to that, but I'm curious now. Before we leave the topic of the public's reaction to things and the way that they interact with the obviously with the game and with the game development community, we've been told that Wargaming really will listen to, or at least World of Warships really will listen to a well thought out, well constructed criticism that's put up in the forums. We've had this confirmed. Specifically, I'll just say specifically regarding there was an article written by a forum member whom we actually brought on to talk about his opinions on the open testing of submarines. And he laid out a very well thought out, non-judgmental, very objective sort of critique. And also I'm not sure what the opposite of critique is. It's a little early for me, but sort of here's where it is, here's where its limitations are, and here's where I think it would be better. And we were told that it was listened to and really taken into account and has actually resulted in a few changes during the test. So my question to you is, what is the best way that the community can get their feelings and their, the knowledge that they've gained by playing and by testing things? How can they get that across to you guys in a way that's productive, in a way that, will really help, not only you guys, but also the game community to feel better about the final product?
I remember this essay, if I may say so.
Yeah, it was.
And I'm not the kind of producing the submarines. So that's one of my team members. He's the main accountable guy for the submarines. But I remember him bringing this to me, and we looking into this. And I don't expect every player to provide feedback this way, of course. So it's not realistic. But yes, the more constructive, descriptive you get, generally it's just easier for us to digest and validate. But it's just very important to understand that feedback can be also remove rocket planes, but it's not actionable for us directly. So we can't just, for many reasons, we can't just remove rocket planes, and we're not removing them. But still, even such feedback like remove rocket planes, I don't like this, it still doesn't go to waste, because rocket planes are being changed. For example, in the last update with the aiming, and they were changed several times before that in different ways. So even such feedback, very emotional, if I may say so, and very direct about some specific aspect, very super subjective, it's still useful, it's still actionable. But of course, when someone gives us an essay and we see that this person actually, it's not just a lot of words, it's actually the work that person put into testing, into thinking about it, of course, it's also very interesting. And as for submarines, I think, talking about feedback, one should also remember that it's not actionable sometimes in quick way. I remember that after Submarines beta test, when it still was in the separate client, a lot of people suggested that battleships should have some dedicated anti-submarines warfare to counter the subs directly. But then we didn't add such way into the live event, right, which followed shortly. And I've seen a lot of people being super negative about it, like they didn't listen to us, so we asked them to add some counter for submarines to battleships. But at the same time, the problem is that we were already working on it based on this feedback. And guess what? It was just not possible to prepare this particular feature for this particular live event at this particular point, but it was already in development. On the other hand, it was not productive and it was super inefficient if we would cancel the event or delay the event, because we had so much other things to test. So, for example, right now we're finalizing this feature, and I think maybe it's a bit of spoiler, actually. I'm not sure if I can... Yeah, whatever. I think I'm running a bit ahead of DevBlock, which will, by the way, happen. The DevBlock should happen this week, actually. So stay tuned. We'll talk a lot about changes to submarines. We'll tell you about what we changed and why for the next testing stage, which is still testing, right? They're not being released as is. We're working on this. So we're finalizing this feature of battleship anti-submarines warfare. based on the community feedback, but we just couldn't do it in time for the first live event. And we actually told this in dev blog, but still people didn't catch it, or maybe our wording was not good. But a lot of people assume that we're ignoring this feedback because we're not doing this directly and immediately. But sometimes it just takes several iterations internally to prepare this.
Right. So we've made some news there. There is going to be counter sub warfare coming to battleships, which I think was, and can we also say heavy cruisers
and heavy cruisers?
Okay, cool. That'll make. I did the test myself. I was a little bit nonplussed by the submarines in game, so I'm glad to hear that the things seem to be moving the right direction, and we just
look.
need to be patient,
I can promise that you will like it, but I actually participated in the internal tests. And I specifically played Battleship, and I had really, troublingly satisfying feeling of doing bad things to Submarine. It's not that I obliterated it, no, but before that, Submarines annoyed me on Battleship, and now I think I was able to annoy the sub, which is a good thing. So yeah, I think the dev book will come in a couple of days, so you'll see some more information and details.
So moving on, we actually think we were going to plan to talk about submarines shortly. If Bogsy has any more questions on that, I guess we'll get back to it. But what I wanted to ask you is about certain other development endeavor within World of Warships, and that was NTC, Naval Training Center. Did you, when that was rolling out, when that was first being announced, that the way it was going to work struck me as a pretty dramatic change in this game that would shift what defined success in this game away to some extent from skill and closer to grind, in the same, make it a little bit more like Eve, where the more you had, the more you had done in the game started to count more than, say, what your raw skill was, and then basically that was abandoned, completely abandoned. Did you consider NTC to be a significant change to what kind of game this would be, and what made you decide not to go through with it?
And to see, I can hear the helicopters. These flashbacks. So I think that we never considered NTC as an I know I'm kind of dropping the mic here, but we never considered NTC as an objectively significant change from the raw numbers and gameplay effects and balance effect wise, because we have a lot of factors which influence battle performance already, because we also wanted to remove the premium consumables at the same time, which we did later anyway. But in terms of the pure gameplay effect, we wanted it to be noticeable, but not game defining. However, that was, I think, from purely math perspective. But what it turned out to be, I think, is that it considerably changed the perception of the players. And the decision to cancel it was extremely hard. I will give you no BS. It was super hard for us. If you may have noticed, when we have big controversial situations, which happens from time to time, we don't always change our minds. So that's not because we don't want to listen, but that's because we want to validate everything we hear from the community and then make a call, not rush any change. So after each big change proposed for production, there are hours of work of considerations. Unlike some people think, we usually don't make our call by just throwing a bucket of dice and then figuring out the numbers from there. So, yeah. Or I don't know. I also heard. I think it was some Russian player who told me that our way of balancing the game is cutting the head of a chicken off, and then it runs on the pentagram we put on the floor, and then so people do imagine some really weird stuff about us. But I'm going actually to compare NTC with another wonderful feature, which was Puerto Rico. And it's super PTSD example, but I think it's very demonstrative, because if you remember, we have roughly the same scale of players and maybe not the scale of players and happy with our decision, but the same scale of community backlash, if I may say so, community unrest about it. Roughly the same scale, but as you remember, NTC was completely scrapped, and Puerto Rico went on from start to finish without any changes. So. In one case, we decided to bury, I would say, months of work and start from the scratch. And actually, for NTC, we used one of the popular community suggestions, which turned out to be a research bureau, because a lot of players said just make an optional meta shop with some stuff, not some buffs to existing ships, and we did it. And at the same time, we decided to move on with Puerto Rico. And instead of scrapping Puerto Rico or changing it significantly, we just made several very important notes and did much differently with Odin. So we basically improved the next iteration. So the difference is that while we were validating community feedback with NTC, we kind of eventually came with the agreement with the players that it changed the game in a controversial way. We realized that NTC was moving into the direction that it's probably better left untouched, and we managed to find enough of the internal argument to make this sharp turn. But if we compare it to Puerto Rico, despite of the evident negativity, even before the announcement, we already knew that Puerto Rico was not a broken ship. It was actually well-balanced, okay ship. And objectively for the game, the addition of the ship, it doesn't carry any risks for player experience, for the health of the game. The main issue with the PR event was about complexity, monetization, difficulty of the event, positioning of the event. And for us, the most logical case would to just learn, suck this up. Yes, we failed here in terms of perception of players, and we need to do a better dockyard next time. Let's move on. Let's design a better dockyard, which was Odin. So our losses, in terms of amount of work wasted with NTC were I think several times higher than with Puerto Rico. But we still decided to cancel NTC, and we still kept Puerto Rico because we are okay with challenging ourselves. And we're okay with changing the decision, but only if we can validate this and if we reach these conclusions. And I think that's the difference, and that's why we canceled the NTC eventually. Right.
That's a fair answer, I would say. Synpax, are you? This is fascinating. All of this. I don't want us to forget that it's a long thing for people to listen to. Do you want to go ahead and take a real quick break and then start our second segment?
Sounds good to me.
Great. So Sub, before we bring you back to talk about subs, we're going to take a quick break here real quick, let people use a bathroom and get more water if they need it. But before, I'm going to introduce my segment, which I think, Synpax, stop me if I'm wrong, but I think we introduced this on episode 4 or 5, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. Episode 4 or 5, we started doing just for fun, a little segment called Sink a Ship, where we would basically tell people, our guests, you are Sub-Octavian, and you have access to the master servers in wherever they exist, and you get to go in with your special key card, and you get to look up the game files and completely delete one ship from the game, and all the salt in the world cannot possibly prevent this from happening. You have this power. And now we actually have the Sub-Octavian. So, Sub-Octavian, I'd like you to pretend for a moment that you're Sub-Octavian in Russia with the power to delete a ship. You're going to sink it. You're going to nuke it like the Baker shot. And we're going to have you do that when we come back on Get to Know World of Warships. Welcome back. Thank you all for sticking with us through that break. We are here talking with the one, the only Sub-Octavian from Wargaming. The infamous man himself is here answering our questions to great extent. And we, before the break, have asked him, finally, the zenith of this segment has been to get Sub-Octavian himself to sink a ship. and I think he's ready. Syntax has already told me what he thinks it's going to be. So, Sub, have at it.
That was a tough call, but I would think Khabarovsk.
What?
Wow.
Yes.
Hasn't she suffered enough, sir?
So I would do this because actually I've been playing it from the release, and I think after all changes to game and the nerfs it changed a lot in terms of how I feel playing it. So personally I would redo it from scratch somehow.
Maybe you could talk to somebody.
No, just start over.
You could
I
talk to
know,
somebody
right?
about doing
But
something like that, maybe.
I know, right? I know. Sure, I know someone, but the thing is that's just my personal opinion, which may not necessarily be correct for some players or for some developers. But I think I would do it.
Wow.
I actually have a question for you, but since you mentioned that ship, this is a weird question, and maybe you can't answer it. It's kind of off the wall, but there's this upcoming Transformers collaboration. Some people are going to be more excited about it than others. I'd be more excited if it was the real Optimus Prime's voice, but limitations, Hasbro. I understand it's out of your hands. But one thing that puzzled me a little bit is I understand the Montana and the Gross occur first, and I can't remember which ship Bumblebee.
Gearing. I think.
Gearing. Okay, all of that makes sense. But of all the ships to put Rumble on, or the other, it's the Cobra. How did you decide that Rumble was going to go on not the Grozavoy, not the I don't know, any other number of more popular ships, but the Khabarovsk, and that made me wonder. Wait, is Khabarovsk going to get a buff to make it more attractive to play and get the camo?
I mean, the choice. Obviously, the Transformer universe, it doesn't translate into our game ship nations, right? So when we're choosing the ships, we're not choosing the ship of a particular nation, but rather they are, as far as I know, being chosen but on the equal scale of popularity and the artistic vision that we think that it may be done this way, it may look cool, and so on and so forth. So, and Khabarovsk is a popular ship. It's not as popular, of course, as some other tier 10 ships, but it does have good player base.
Let me ask Let me ask the question a little bit more pointedly then, because that suggests something. You have these player surveys, and I could be mistaken, but I seem to remember one of the surveys asking, "Would you be interested in a Transformers collaboration?" We got asked about all kinds of stuff. I think we asked about an Uncle Ben's Rice collaboration. I'm down with everything, okay? But did you look at the data of people who said they were most enthusiastic about Transformers and then cross-reference that with what ships those people had to determine Khabarovsk? Or did it just or did it not really go that far?
This collab survey, I think it played very substantial role in our collaboration plans. Because obviously you don't think that we have only Transformers coming, right? We work on many more things. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Golden Girls and a Price is Right collaboration.
Sure. But here in Russia, I still have 2 packs of World of Warships branded meal. I think chicken with rice or something, because because Russian airline Aeroflot was flying with our branded meals and our branded journals for many months. I think on almost all their flights. And also, I used to have the credit, not credit. We don't Russians, they don't like credit cards. We use debit cards mostly. We don't like credits. But I've been using debit card with cashback for World of Warships doubloons for 2 years.
What?
Because we have branded cards here in Russia, which give you back certain percentage of all money you spend from this card as doubloons in World of Warships. It's pretty cool. And I also happy to say that here in St. Petersburg we have branded subway tickets, basically branded World of Warships, with Kirov, as far as I remember, and some other ships. And we had Navy Day in Russia, and I think our virtual naval parade video was demonstrated on the main city square, basically on the huge screen. And all of this, I'm happy to say that all of this was done for free. I mean, wow. Our team is really good in terms of negotiating and finding some mutually beneficial opportunities for local collaborations. And we also have some, I think, sausages, World of Warships branded sausages, as we. Actually, there are news about this on Russian portal. You can check this up. I didn't check it up because I'm still waiting for my free box of sausages.
Wow.
But yeah,
So I think you guys also do a little bit of guerrilla marketing stuff, because in the Washington D.C. area, which is where Ovechkin is, or I don't know if he still plays for the Washington team or what, but when he was playing here is when the Ovechkin event rolled out, and you guys did like a old school direct mail campaign to the DC metro area promoting your game and the Ovechkin crossover, which I thought that's pretty innovative. I had no idea they were getting that aggressive with their marketing.
Well, I think we did a lot of things that most of games don't do, and sometimes they don't. It doesn't bring us anything directly, but it's still good that you have, for example, in case of the sausages or airline meals. It's not like people are buying premium ships or jumping into the game directly from the airplane seat. No, but it's still good to have your game, your brand visible on the shelves in the store, or visible in the airline, or visible in the subway. And when you don't have to pay for it, when you just have some mutual interest, it's still cool. But it's very different, because all of this are like local business development stuff, which is not. It doesn't mean that there is any content in the game. But talking about Transformers or anime, all kinds of anime, or Warhammer, obviously these are global collaborations with much higher level of involvement, of commitment, of risks, of contract, because obviously Games Workshop is much more serious in terms of complexity, in terms of how we create this collab than, for example, with sausages, obviously. Because in one case we basically have just branded packaging, and in another case we have several ships, and we have working with the established brand, which they have their own brand identity. We need to approve everything. We need to work with them to make it authentic, and so on and so forth. So we do use this survey about collaborations a lot. We also, of course, have guys who do market analysis, who try to look for opportunities, and then we have also the stage where, for example, we can approach someone and we don't have good terms, right? And then we don't work with this company for now, because we can't agree on the terms which are mutually attractive to us. But initially, yes, of course, we look at what brands, what collabs our audience is interested in. And sometimes it may be absolutely different. Sometimes it may be just a shot of opportunity. So, for example, I love to play tabletop games, and one of my rivals, we play a lot. One of my regular opponents, if I may say so, he told me about a new game from World Games, which is called Victory at Sea. World Games, pretty amazing company. They do this World War II games, war games, pretty serious and hardcore tabletop products, and they have this naval warfare game. And he told me about it, and I told about it to our BizDev manager, and he contacted World Games, and they now putting our bonus codes to the products connected with naval warfare, which is cool. We have new contact. It was very interesting, but it was like, moment of opportunity, because to be honest, you can't expect any business development manager to know about every Navy associated product or every opportunity. So the good part, as I mentioned before, that in our team there are a lot of horizontal connections, and it actually may work that a friend of mine offered an opportunity of collaboration. I related to BizDev, and it happened actually. This is what I love about working here, actually, comparing to my previous jobs, especially.
Well, I gotta say that we've learned already an enormous amount about who you are specifically, and I know that Synpax and I, in this interview, we wanted to try and do a balance, which was we wanted to try and learn as much about the game, and especially more controversial things about the game, as we could, just because we wanted to put a human face onto it. But we also wanted to know about you, as a frequent target of a lot of the public's ire, and as a frequent voice in the community. We really did want to give put a personality to you that people may not be aware of before this. And it's so fun to hear that it sounds to me like you're a gamer at your core, which I think a lot of people wouldn't really have expected, but it's been a pleasure to hear that so far. If you guys are ready,
I mean, come on! I abandoned my previous job and went to absolutely new thing in wargaming, losing basically making almost all my experience and my previous raises irrelevant because I switched the careers. Because I'm a gamer, I wanted to do it, but maybe that's also because I worked in banking and it's really damn boring. Oh. so I wanted to run from banking maybe as much as I wanted to run into gaming.
Moving back, we've talked a little bit about submarines already, and I know you said that that's not really that's not the area of the game that you're specifically working on, but obviously you have some knowledge of it. So I have a couple quick questions. You've actually addressed a lot of our following questions. You've sort of already addressed them. So I think from here, Synpax and I both are going to probably try to just focus those, what we've already heard a little bit, and then make it nice and clean for the audience. So I have some specific questions about the development process, and I understand you can't tell us everything, but I'm going to try and get what I can. I have two questions about submarines, and then also about the process of we got a dev blog update about how you're going to test carriers being reworked in terms of spotting of destroyers and whatnot. I assumed that was in direct result from the season 9 of Clan Battles and the incredible reconnaissance capabilities of the aircraft carriers. So, whatever you can tell us about those is what I'm going to try and get. But for now, to start with submarines, may I ask you where we're at in the development process of submarines?
As I mentioned, we already had internal playtests of the new scope, but this so basically we have a list of changes. List of commitments we did to ourselves to I mean you'll see for yourself, because the dev blog is going to be up in a couple of days, I hope, but I do think that we addressed like most of the, if not all of the main feedback points from the community there, one way or another, and we have this commitment internally that we want this scope to be tested with the players now. And we already have internal playtest, but the scope is not complete yet. Okay. So we're kind of internally we're testing a very unfinished version of what we want to give players to test. So there is a lot of work to be made before we can reliably launch the second. If I may call it sandbox or whatever, actually, second live event. The idea here is that, and this is, I think I mentioned it in a couple of interviews and in Q&As, that one of the biggest mistakes in terms of how CV rework was handled is that we let too many technical issues, too many mechanical issues go into this test iteration, and that made us spend a lot of time sorting out technical issues where we should have been sorting the gameplay issues. So if you remember, I'm sure you played the Submarine event, mm-hmm. and maybe you can correct me if you disagree, but I think that if we lay aside the gameplay questions, as a playable product, it was already okay. It was already okay in terms of working, in terms of not having too much bugs, and we want the same standard of quality for testing, even though it's testing, even though it may be changed or scrapped in some parts in future, but we still want to spend more time preparing this so that when our players go there and test and try the submarines, they can concentrate on the gameplay, not on bugs or not working UI or some crashes or bad optimization. So we still have a lot of things to do, but we already know what we want to give you for the second stage. I would formulate it like this.
Oh, me personally? Oh, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to an email in my inbox saying, Bogsy, this is all for you. Have fun in the Submarine sandbox. I can't wait. Anyway. Well, it's good to hear, because I did feel like the Submarine sandbox that we got last time, I felt like there were very few bugs necessarily, but more. I mean, I didn't encounter any personally myself, but I think that was a wise choice, just because I'll once again reference Pulleycat's article on, hey, here are the min-max capabilities of this, and here's where I think I think you're able to get much more effective gameplay feedback when there are fewer bugs, like you were saying. So I'm looking forward to the second sandbox event then, if that's what you say is coming. And before I throw it back to Synpax here, are you able to give us any kind of update on what's happening in terms of, I guess, the public dev blog that you guys released talking about testing you'd be doing on the carrier spotting mechanic and fighter spotting, the droppable fighter spotting mechanic, when it comes to destroyers, which was a main issue of Season 9 of Clan Battles, was the ability for carriers to spot and effectively neuter destroyers, thereby replacing the spotting function of destroyers. You guys said that you're going to be testing a few things on that. Are you able to give us any kind of update on how that's going, what you guys have learned, and where you think it might end up?
Let's clarify, because I'm not sure I understood it correctly. So you're talking about the changes of destroyer visibility versus carriers, right?
Yes, sir. I think, stop me if I'm wrong, and Synpax, please jump in if I'm getting something wrong here. But you guys released after Season 9 of Clan Battles, you released I believe it was a dev blog, saying that you would be testing a reduced visibility for destroyers to carriers. Yes.
Yes, that's correct. I kind of believe in this decision, but I didn't have a chance to play it yet. I believe not in this decision, but in this idea but it's not ready. It should be tested very carefully. I think it should really make the destroyers versus carriers in terms of being spotted much more interesting and much more interactive. But I want to be very careful about this, because the problem with spotting generally, in my opinion, just I'm not relying on any solid data or spreadsheet. It's just my opinion of how the game works, is that a lot of experienced players, they tend to, because they have this experience, because they've played a huge number of battles, they understand very well how the spotting works in our game. They understand kind of the rules of this. And this is why they are more likely to propose more dramatic changes. For example, like just make carriers not be able to share the spotting with the team. It's so easy. Just do it. It's a very easy solution. And they propose such solutions mainly, I think, these solutions are influenced by the fact that they understand how the spotting works already. But the fact is that from what we know, for new players, for less experienced players, our spotting system is not super easy, and making any big changes to it may actually hurt more people, hurt the game more than it would benefit the game. And this is why, for example, we decided to cancel the idea of minimap only spotting for carriers, at least for now. And we're testing this new idea, which we mentioned in the dev blog. Right. And in this new idea, this new idea was also a challenging decision to try, but we believe that it may work. This is why we're going to test it. And I think as for going into details, I would wait for the full announcement.
Sure.
Well, I actually,
but I mean, we already discussed it, I think, in dev blogs, but
Okay.
I just don't have an update.
So part of your explanation is that you're concerned about certain changes being a little bit too complicated for, let's say, more casual clans to be able to wrap their heads around.
Not clans, just players, because we don't want to change the core mechanics for one game mode.
Because what I'm getting at, that's what I'm getting at, is that you fundamentally do not want to have a different ship characteristics from randoms than you would in clan battles. You want to, if you solve it, you want to. This has to be a solution that affects both game modes in the same way that maybe you guys kind of nerfed the Yu Yang because of its prominence in clan battles, but you also, because, or maybe it's because of how successful it was in randoms, but it had a tremendous effect on the gameplay in clan battles. So what you're saying is, to avoid the confusion, whatever the change is, it has to be in both game modes.
Yang is a bad example because we sledgehammered it, and this approach.
Did you sledgehammer it because of its performance in clan battles, or because of its performance in randoms? Or both?
I think both. But of course, clan battles did play a significant part in this. But the change itself was not according to our current standards. We changed the procedure. If you noticed, if we change the ships that already are released, that people already play, we try to do it very incrementally, unless it's necessary to do heavier changes. So we don't cut 1/3 of your DPM anymore without trying incremental changes first. But as for your question, it's a really tough question actually, because I think internally we things that work.
I'm sorry, you cut out for just a second. Go on.
Yeah, in terms of clans versus random, I think we may probably live with some things working differently, but we should be very careful about it, because if we do a game mode which works. We can do a lot of game modes which work differently from the main game. We did it on Halloween. We do it from time to time on many occasions. But clan battles, ranked battles, and random battles and co-op, they are the main game modes, always accessible, and they are a super integral part of our game. And in these game modes, we want to have the I'm not sure what the word is, but we want player experience in terms of interaction with core mechanics and how the ships work. We want it to be more or less consistent between these modes, because this way the transition between these modes are easier, and this way it's easier for random player to start playing ranked and for ranked player to start playing clan. I'm not saying that it always does like this. Of course, there are players who skip ranked, or who play only ranked, or who play only co-op. But if we have the game which works on the core, on the basis, which works the same in different main game modes, it's, in our opinion, better than having very different rules. Which doesn't mean that we will not experiment.
Well, right.
But I'm just explaining why we are reluctant to make significant changes to core mechanics because of that.
Sort of. Well, on the same topic. It was quite a big decision to allow aircraft carriers into clan battles. And I think that there was a lot of complaints, a lot of noise was made about this. And I think that clearly the message that there were concerns about this was made through, because you're talking about changes that are being made. And the response is in the dev blog. But what I kind of want to ask is, did you guys? I think the real reason there are so many complaints, fundamentally, is because when you add aircraft carriers to a game, be it a random battle, but especially a clan battle where you've got approximately, roughly 7 people, it's a very different game. And people who liked what the game was before and what could happen in those compositions that did not have CVs, when you add CVs, it is a fundamentally different game for very, and that's not, and the issue, people use the word spotting. It's not really an issue of spotting. Spotting, I consider, spotting a target so others can lock onto it and shoot at it. It's actually a matter, a different word. The issue, what changes is recon. It's a reconnaissance difference where you have almost, the comparison I've made in the past is that just imagine playing StarCraft and then imagine playing StarCraft with Fog of War turned off. Now, it's not as absolute as that because, there are some things you can't see. You don't have perfect vision all the time, but it's in that direction. When you decided to allow aircraft carriers into the game, did you do that because, was it primarily because you wanted to allow people who like playing aircraft carriers to participate in clan battles, or was it because you fundamentally wanted to change how clan battles operate?
I actually wish we did it earlier. But we could.
If they were there at the beginning, there would have been no complaints, right?
I don't think there would be no complaints, but actually I don't want to put it on players, but I remember some complaints in the old days where we didn't allow carriers somewhere. As far as I remember, people were like, oh my god, I think it was if I'm not mistaken, it was RTS carriers back then.
Yep.
And they were like people who, they don't have carriers in clan battles, but we have them in King of the Sea. That's bullshit because we want to have them. The perspective changes with time. Anyway, I think that carriers, they are part of the game, and we don't want to, we worked a lot on them already. We need to work more, but at some point you need to put it into a live environment and see what you should change next or what you shouldn't change next. I actually, in terms of having this more recon and comparison to Fog of War, I can relate to what you're saying. And I'm going to say this amazingly horrible thing that I had a lot of hours of conversations about this with game designers. We talked a lot about this particular aspect, that having the carrier makes it kind of removes some part of Fog of War. It makes some things more predictable, right? In terms of spotting and knowing about the enemy position. And from game design perspective, we don't treat it as necessarily a bad thing, to be honest. But of course, anyone feels free to disagree with it. I totally understand that, and I also totally understand that having I think it's more than a year of clan battles without carriers, and now having the carriers in the clan battles, it's super difficult and it's super challenging, and we need to make changes. We're not going to just make the next season exactly as it was, because we don't think that we should stop right here and say, okay, we done our job, carriers are fine in clan battles, and everywhere let's just forget about this and switch to the next topic.
I want to make it clear though that clan battles with CVs is a very different game than clan battles without CVs, and some people I personally prefer loading into a random battle depending on the ship I'm in. I prefer to load into a game that doesn't have a CV. I personally prefer CVs in clan battles because it requires a higher level of reactiveness on the team, and I personally like them in clan battles. But I think what would settle people down more is variety. So if it was known that some seasons there will, if people could get what they wanted, maybe not as much, but in pieces, maybe they'd be happier, and they would also be, variety is good, right? Like down to a tier 6 season. So could you foresee a season like a tier 10 clan battle season that just say, hey, this season, no CVs? Or is there always going to be, are we always going to have CVs as part of clan battles moving forward?
I'm, after the whole thing with submarines, I'm trying to get myself used not to use words always or never.
Or nerfing premiums, right?
We'll see. But speaking of tier 6, I'm absolutely aware that you guys are like far more competitive players than I am in World of Warships. But actually, because of work from home situation, I had chance to play in this last season on tier 6. And speaking of variety, to be honest, for me, the factor that I didn't like most was not the CV, because we managed to build a solid team of my friends who work from home. Also, most of them are my colleagues, of course, we switched between Battleship and CV, and we didn't notice. Of course, our destroyer player dedicated DD main, he did notice difference, of course, but not that critical difference. What most of us got really tired of was playing Graf Speer.
I'm not alone in that.
Go
and
on.
Of course, I'm not saying that the problems of the last season are all because of Graf Speer as opposed to CV. No. Absolutely not. But for me personally and for my friends, it was a very annoying factor. And playing Graf Speer, and Jesus, the problem is that it also I think we kind of failed here, because Graf Speer was a super massive reward for Odin Dockyard, which was happening at the time. So I'm sorry for this language, but shit ton of people received the ship for free. In addition to the players that already received it back then, right?
Right.
And when one ship dominates the meta, not just one class or one branch, one ship, because survivability, reliability, because you need it. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys played differently, but
maybe
for me it was space season.
Maybe
really.
you've heard of this other ship called Stalingrad. But I hear you. In fact, I kind of wonder if the decision to move to tier 6 and give away a tier 6 premium cruiser, part of the challenge of talking, this is now going to sound a little odd, part of the challenge to talking to somebody about their experience in clan battles is entirely based on what level they are playing the game at. So my crew, we're I think right now like number 10 North America. Our other crew is currently number 2 North America. So we are playing at a certain level where, honestly, if I run in with my crew a team full of Graf Speers, I'm more than happy to see them. We have none of them in our lineup. We tried it differently at the different times. And the thing about the strategy this season, there's a lot of different textures. It hasn't been solved in the same way that previous seasons seem to have been solved by bringing like 6 Venetias or something like that. And I don't want to turn this podcast into us basically going down suggestions that you should try, because that's we know this is just going to be a non-starter, because I'd love to see a one. You can only bring one ship of each type, right? But so you can only bring one Venetia, all that stuff. I don't want to get into suggestions though, but what I basically was asking,
we do have some ideas actually,
right? But I'm sure you get plenty of them because you read the surveys. But what I guess I'm getting at is that if you consider that one way to ameliorate some of the anger is that, okay, one season it's this way, the next season it's another way, and I think as long as that's known, then there's going to be less anger, or so it's just my thought on. But I guess I want to move on from that and talk about, since we're already sort of talking about, what are your ambitions for World of Warships competitive? Because you guys sunk a huge amount of resources into King of the Seas. I'm not just talking about prizes, but you have an in-game collection, which clearly that cost real money for your, internally your company, all the artwork for that. You guys did a lot of, work promoting King of the Seas, but then on the other hand, there aren't a lot of other tournaments that seem to be getting love from Wargaming officially, although they're independently organized, like Supremacy League or the Warship Masters Invitational, which actually I can't recall. Oh no, that's an unofficial event. So what is your vision for a successful competitive scene for World of Warships?
For us, it's important to distinguish competitive and esport. I think it's super important because I'm not sure you're mixing it up, but a lot of people do mix it up.
Well, we'll define those terms.
So yeah. I think World of Warships is a highly competitive game in a way that competitive for us means that there is a lot of room in the game to apply the skill. And even though it's much less mechanical reaction-based skill than you use in Call of Duty or Battlefield, we have like dozens of nuances in the mechanics that one can master, one can use to the advantage. And in my opinion, the biggest aspect that influences player success in the game is strategical thinking. And when you project it to the team versus team, not just playing in randoms, but team versus team, it gets even deeper. And in our game, you do get advantage by thinking not just 1 minute ahead, but 2, 3, 5 minutes ahead, positioning, map awareness, all this stuff. So in this sense, World of Warships is a competitive game, and we have competitive game modes. In my opinion, that we do have a mechanics that works in the opposite direction, and I mean show dispersion, right? This is random. This is the mechanics which is random and which actually reduces the skill, but in fact it reduces the mechanical aspect of the game hard, but it's still preserving the strategic aspect of the game. So I would say slightly,
that because I understand that there have been pushback to making World of Warships an esport game. I think it should be an esport game for the same reason that there's a World Series of Poker. Because ultimately, you have one game, you have one salvo you fire, and there's an RNG factor. But you do that 100 times, and you have 100 games, then the variance kind of washes out, and what you're left with is skill. And I kind of think, that's how ranked works, right? You get a bad team, frequently, and that's also RNG. But ultimately, when you repeat it over and over again, that's why I imagine that you guys balance your game not over a single game, but over like 100 games. So if you look at a ship and it has really bad time one game because of matchmaking, let's say it's a battleship and it's a game with like 4 Asashios on the enemy team, you don't look at that one game and say, yeah, this is horribly imbalanced. You look over 100 games. So I think I just think that World of Warship has more potential in that esport factor, even though there is some RNG because basically when you find ways to subtract RNG over time or with different mechanics, eventually you're left with skill in the same way that you still see the same faces at the final table at the World Series of Poker main event year after year.
Sure. No, I'm not saying that show dispersion makes World of Warships not competitive. What I'm saying is that it's not the shooting skill. It's not the dispersion which makes the majority of wins or losses in a typical game. And in this aspect, I am absolutely sure, and I think the team would agree that World of Warships is highly competitive. So we will keep supporting the competitive game modes. And King of the Sea is amazing because, yes, we put a lot of resources and efforts, but the community puts a lot of resources and efforts into making this tournament happen, and we're super happy about it. It's like mutual benefit for everyone because for the people who know how the game works, I think watching top teams compete in King of the Sea is actually pretty amazing watch. But in terms of esport, I'm honestly telling you that we're not planning to do anything above this game modes and tournaments because of many factors. From factor that for esport is you need to invest a lot. And it should have some clear goals, and it should give you visibility. And it's actually a long argument. I'm not saying that our direction is the only right direction, but as I said, we decided to prioritize competitive modes and community tournament. We can argue a lot about this, argue about how our game looks when you look it up on Twitch, not knowing how about the game. Is it interesting to watch for a lot of people or not? We can argue about how game mechanics work, about the fact that, I don't know, maybe if you're playing some fast character in some first-person shooter, you can eliminate 3 or 4 enemies very quickly and make amazing kill streak. And in World of Warships, you can't, because it doesn't work this way, and it will take you, 2 minutes, even if you're brawling in Odin in the middle of the enemy lines. So, there are a lot of things that we considered, and we're not trying to make World of Warships an esport game consciously, not just because we don't think it's a good idea. We have a lot of internal argument against investing in this, and instead investing into other things.
Well, I'd say though that the patience of the game lends it a little bit more, because if you look at contemporary sports like basketball, or especially soccer, which I know is you call it football, or I don't know what they call it in Russia, but it is a patient game. It's not like one moment happens and like in an FPS or even in boxing where just one punch and the fight's over the first round. That doesn't make it necessarily any less watchable. Nonetheless, that's what I really wanted to get at though, is that do you want to have a future for World of Warships that has, say, something more than just King of the Seas, or are you interested in having Wargaming officially sponsor more outside tournaments, and how would that maybe be reflected in let's just I have one follow-up on this, so let's just stop there and give you the chance to respond.
No, that's fine. I think if I recall correctly, we helped a bit with another tournament. I think it was Shipstorm.
2 of them actually, Fight for the Flagship and Shipstorm.
Yeah. And these tournaments, King of the Sea is obviously the king of all tournaments, and it works amazingly well for our core audience. We've been on front page of Twitch, right, with this tournament, which is pretty big, but it's still for us. It's still more of the way of engagement of our current players than the way to conquer more audience, to conquer more scene. So for now, when we think about World of Warships competitiveness, we think about improving clan battles. We think about how next King of the Sea would play, but we're not thinking about such things as sponsoring teams and this esport thing, and young people aspiring to make a career of professional World of Warships player. That's not something we envision. I'm not saying that we don't want this. No, but we just don't see at the moment. We don't see a good opportunity to invest into this with more or less, acceptable risks and results. Because of manufacturers. Well, right, but a company like Riot looks at the Esport League of Legends as being a tremendous way to get more people. It's a marketing event. It's a business, right? As much fun as they might have, they see it as, hey, this is a great way to get new players in the game. You currently do not see. You're not emphasizing King of the Seas or anything else as a marketing tool, but more as a way to keep current audience engaged. Because the competitive clan battles, particularly in King of the Seas, is that because of just the fundamentals? Is it it's only of particular interest to maybe a small percentage of your player base, whereas maybe more your player base might be interested in I don't know, a great historical ship like the California being introduced or something. That's what gets them excited. And that as well, but yes. Anyway, King of the Sea is anyway good even in terms of marketing, because as I said, we got to Twitch front page. It's really cool, but as your example with League of Legends is the example of esports taken to the extreme level. And this level we don't consider at the moment for our game because of many different reasons. But as for supporting tournaments, if, for example, we see any new tournament emerging and we believe in this idea, we will do our best to support it as well. So we are interested in spending resources, in spending effort for competitive but we don't see it as an esport. We don't see it in the way of being the tool for promoting the game heavily, being part of the business. If I don't know actually if I managed to explain this, but I tried hard.
I get it. And on the competitive side, I just have really, I guess, one more question, and this is, again, we committed ourselves to not go down the road of complaints or suggestions. It's just true questions, which but this is still on the competitive side, is that how much, the noisiest people on any of the forums are the most dedicated to the game, the most competitive, probably the most, in terms of skill, the highest skill players. They tend to be the loudest, but they may not, and you know this better than anyone outside the company, better than Bogsy and I certainly, because you have access to the spreadsheet TM, but they may not actually reflect the views of the whole community. So when you have these very high skill, highly active players making a lot of noise about something and things don't go their way, they think you're just ignoring them, whereas the truth may be that the direction they want to go in, the directions they're suggesting, might be good for them and might be good for the high skilled players or the most super dedicated, but it's not the right decision for the player pool as a whole. And that's, as Spock said, I guess the good of the many outweigh the good of the few. You're still a business, so fundamentally that's got to be what drives the decisions. But one of the things we hear a lot from not all, but many of the high-end skill clan folks, the folks that we rub shoulders with on a given clan battle night and we encounter on our discords, so there's a little bit of concern about the pacing of things, and that these people, and I use this word politely, you have an issue where but there are a lot of completely addicted degenerates who can't help themselves, and they have to always be at the top of the charts, top of the leaderboards. They've got to have the purple tags, they've got to have all the steel camos. So if you had clan battles run nonstop every night, they could not help themselves and would play every night for 4 hours ad infinitum. But so some folks, like the clan battle leaders, might say, well, look, could we ease the pacing, like have longer breaks between clan battle seasons, a little bit more space, because the pace, we're fearful of burnout and we can't help ourselves. We have to play. So you make the decision for us and have a longer break between clan battle seasons? And you may say, well, yeah, just don't play. The mid-level clans, the Squall, Glail, Storm folks, they play a couple nights a week, and if there's more opportunities for them to play, they'll do that, and that makes them happy. And it's understandable, but if the majority of the folks want to have more often clan battles and the loud majority at the top maybe don't, well, you're going to listen to the larger group of people, right?
I can relate to this thing, and yes, I'm perfectly aware that you can just not play. This argument doesn't work for super competitive people who kind of feel forced to play because they feel that they're missing opportunity, and that's the particular trouble here is that the interests of and the dedication of these people, somehow we need to balance it with the dedication level of less active clans, less hardcore clans, and it's always. Unfortunately, it's always kind of the system where you change things for one group of players, but it also may lead to consequences to other group of players. So for some people, having such schedule may actually be beneficial because they don't have a lot of opportunities to play with their friends or with the clans, but they will have more opportunities to do it in a comfortable way. And at the same time, for the people who want to compete on highest level, it can create more pressure to play more frequently when they are already playing frequently. This is what you're trying to say, as far as I understand.
Yeah,
right?
It's like maybe I think that a middle ground might be, you've got brawls, which the people who win clan battle seasons don't feel the need to break their necks to win a brawl. Maybe more like something like that to keep these mid-level folks engaged. And hell, I love our clan is quite infamous for taking brawls a little more seriously than others, but more of that in that interim, so that just the hyper competitive mode of clan battle seasons has a little bit more breathing room between them, like maybe 2 months or something, or because they in the United States with the football season, American football, there's a term, football widows, because basically their husbands all Sunday are just watching football, right? So they're a World of Warships widow, and I happen to be married to one, and she'd really appreciate it if you could give us some more breathing room between the hyper-competitive clan battle seasons.
I definitely need to go to our high-end meta team who is responsible for things like Clan Wars and talk with them about this. Maybe they have some new ideas which I'm not aware about, but just for the context, back then when the clan battles were introduced, and generally the clan battles, they are not intended to burn out the core players. The clan battles, as a feature from the audience point of view, obviously from the conceptual point of view, it's good to have a competitive mode when you can play with a big team of friends. That's all right. But from the audience point of view, from business point of view, clan battles are a way to prevent particular segments of audience from being bored, because playing randoms gets boring for them.
Right. Well, if there's just some kind of light version of it, but that not maybe something like a semi-clan battle season that wasn't taken as absolutely seriously, but was something between clan battles and brawls where. Sure. Yes. The
ranked sprints and clan brawls there were intended kind of bridge some kind of middle ground, but. If you would promise me that we can make longer breaks between clan battles and it would not ruin our audience performance, I would probably just do it immediately, just because you ask nicely. But
that's kind of
what I'm trying to say is that there's always some other consequences connected with this, and while some super hardcore top players would maybe feel some. I'm not sure if all of them, but I'm not trying to. Of course, I'm not trying to devalue your argument. Let's say that, for the sake of the argument, that maybe all very, very top clans would feel some kind of relief if they had more time between seasons, and it's important. It's a valid argument, but what consequences would be for the other segments of clan battles who are engaged with this feature on much less competitive level, on lesser level, but there are a lot of these people and there are our players as well. So I'm not trying to say that your particular needs, they are less important than needs of other players, no, but I'm just trying to explain why we are not saying, oh yeah, you guys really got tired of this, we need to make the seasons less frequent. It's not our goal to burn you out, it's because in the end it will be worse for everyone if you burn out. But
a lot of people are happy to hear that you recognize that burnout is a potential cost, and if there was just something that people wouldn't take as seriously, or even if you had clan battles where they had a quote-unquote preseason where people were not the rewards were maybe a little bit less, and maybe there wasn't a true leaderboard, and the preseason was a few weeks, and that made a difference between when the real season started. I don't know, I'm just spitballing, but I want to move on from this to another question, which is probably the most difficult question we've got for you. As you may or may not be aware, there are hacks in World of Warships, AIM hacks, which, based on our current intelligence on the issue, and it's not just AIM hacks, but they do all kinds of other things, that basically revealing things in the client that you clearly do not intend. And I know that this has been an issue because I know that Wargaming has cracked down on it in the past, but as of right now, based on what we've heard, these have been active. They've been active for a while, maybe 6 months or longer, according to I guess what I've seen on Reddit and from other people who are in the know. And there's not been a ban waiver or anything. What is Wargaming doing to address this?
Surely, I'm aware. I've been working on the first edition of our anti-hacks rules back then when we started to consistently ban people for this. And it's I think that I would be correct if I say that most of this illegal, if I may call it illegal software, illegal mods, cheats, whatever we call it, they normally deal with most thing they do is like they deal with aim prediction.
Well, they do a couple of things. Number one, they do.
I know. Yes, I know.
Okay.
Of course, but what I'm saying is that they cannot. There are a lot of core, super important things that they cannot technically do. For example, they cannot reveal the enemy ship if it's not revealed.
Well,
or they cannot they cannot boost your damage or change your HP. So there are things that are strictly server side, and
Sure.
the server just doesn't give the information to the client technically. So, but there are things that are being given to the client, and this is why there is software which actually helps you to aim, right? It gives you prediction based on the target speed and direction. And like this is I think one of the most popular applications. I also seen the software which tries to project where the shells would land after they're being shot.
And where they're shot from out of smoke, along with extending torpedo prediction line. So somebody's firing at smoke, it will tell you exactly.
So usually, I know. So usually, how the software works is that it tries to get the information which is available in the client, because this software cannot hack our server, right? It cannot give information which we don't give to the client, but it tries to have the information we give to the clients, and it tries to project something based on this to give players some kind of advantage. Right. And the problem with this is that it's a never-ending process, like arms race between two countries.
Right.
So we improve our detection and issue bans, and these guys, they take their time and they try to improve their software, and then we reply, we make a response, and it goes this way. But the problem is that sometimes it takes more time to adjust our detection. Sometimes it actually happens quickly, but sometimes it takes months. And the thing which is really important to remember is that we have consistent system of warnings and bans, and you actually can permanently lose your account by using this software, and it happens a lot of times, and will keep happening. And I just want to say that the users who use the software, even if they think they can get away with it for a couple of months, they are always detected in the end, and punishments are issued and bans are issued, including permanent bans, which you cannot actually cancel in any way. They are final. So which means that actually by using this software, even if it works for a couple of months, you're basically risking your account by being permanently banned. And it's not the matter of if it will be dealt with, it's a matter of just when it will be another ban wave, and then when people will receive their warnings and bans. So I really can't recommend putting their accounts at risk, especially because it's unethical, of course, because it's not fair, but also even if the person is really evil and wants to cheat, the problem, in my opinion, is that this software, it doesn't give that. Of course, it can help you in certain situations and give you an advantage, and any advantage isn't fair in this case. I agree with this, but it's still not that major benefit to risk your account with, especially given how much battles and how much time and grind people put into their accounts. But you can just lose it by using this stuff, so don't.
Right.
Okay, I think Bogsy actually has a hard out coming up. But I'll let. But basically, what you're saying is that you have the access to the hack. You have it. Your engineers are doing their best to reverse engineer it, to find ways to detect it. It's just a bit of a struggle. But you are, because that does contradict a little bit of what Wargaming has said, is that the game is secure. There are no hacks, because we've seen that in recent official statements where you're saying you're aware, your team is doing their best, and eventually they will prevail.
The game is secure in the way that as I explained, that all major things that affect the gameplay, they're calculated on the server, and
Yes.
they're giving to the client only as a result. So you cannot be more accurate in terms of dispersion. You cannot see what other players can see. What the software can do is it can use the information like shell tracers firing from the ship, or it can try to capture the ship moving and try to paint some interface for you to kind of help you, which any good player can reliably do as well. But of course, it's still unfair, and this is why we prohibit this software. We don't have a hugely dedicated security team who sits there and spends all the time working on this. But we have dedicated resources. We always look for this software, I would say, market, to see what's up there and what do we need to do with the client to protect it from this. And we are not taking any compromise here, even though it may take more time sometimes, we will still get there, and these people will be banned.
Got it.
Regardless.
Bugsy?
Got it. Yes, well, I just have one last question for you here, Sub, and I think I can speak for both Synpax and myself when I say that we really appreciate you coming on and having a very frank and candid conversation with us about the inner workings of this game, the outer exterior of this game, and really, the culture that a lot of us find ourselves putting a lot of time and effort and investment into. It's really a pleasure to be able to speak about it, in these terms, and have your truly unique perspective included in it. So thank you from both of us for coming on our podcast and being willing to talk about it. I think my last question is just going to be, what is World of Warships going to look like in 3 years?
Well, I mean, we already conquered the Russian sausage market, so we should conquer the world. No, that's how I'm trolling. I'm trolling the CIS regional director, who is usually driving all these initiatives. When he runs up excited to me and says, "Hey Phil, look at my new credit card here. Do you see the Missouri there? It's my new World of Warships credit card." Or, "Hey Phil, check out the sausages with World of Warships." Or, "Hey Phil, do you want to go to Subway? Just buy the World of Warships ticket." And I'm just trolling him like, maybe you should run for president because you already kind of you're already everywhere. But yeah, the exciting part, I think, is that I'm not entirely sure, because everything is changing so rapidly if you put things into long perspective, and everything is changing, and game industry changing even more rapidly maybe than the rest of the world. Like, did I know that we've been working with Hasbro or Games Workshop? Well, I knew some time ago, but not 3 years ago, definitely. Absolutely not. Or did we imagine that we will be doing Submarines 3 years ago? We kind of hoped, but there were no super solid plans or commitment to this. Of course, that doesn't mean that we don't plan. We have, I think we have several planning horizons, and the major beats for each update, normally we plan them a year ahead, but they're not really set in stone anyway, like NTC, for example, right? Especially after we have 3 or 4 months ahead, then it's really sketches. It's not set in stone. And some content does have longer planning, like if we talk about ship tech trees, because how much time goes into researching them, into preparing them. Yes, we do. I do know what ship tech trees most likely will have in 1 and 2 years. Maybe if I look up in some secret documents, even 3 years ahead, maybe. And some things, on the contrary, are much smaller in terms of scale, and they should be quickly adaptable to the situation. For example, balance changes. Yes, I know that some balance changes take more time than you guys want, but generally we try to be more flexible. So in 3 years, I don't know what the game will look like. I'm sure that there will be major changes, major additions. I'm sure that what I see that the game is not just alive and kicking. The game is still in this very exciting stage where we have, like, it's our main game. It's the main game of our studio, along with World of Warships Legends. It's our super successful, super big project. So we'll be doing a lot of new big things. I don't see the game going into maintenance mode in 3 years at all. Like, this game is huge, and I really this is why I'm still here. I cannot get bored on this work, because we always do something new. And how exactly it will evolve, it depends on a lot of things, including your opinions, our opinions, how the game plays, how current features are being received, what will be successful, what will be not successful, how we introduce submarines. Will we require submarines rework in 3 years? Who knows?
That's funny.
Maybe. But do I have a roadmap for 3 years ahead? No, absolutely not. That's just pointless, because you will adjust it that many times that it will be completely different anyway. But we have a huge backlog. That I can tell you for sure. And whenever we have resources time, we always have some ideas. And that's actually very, very funny, because we still update our game super frequently. 1 month, monthly. We have huge monthly updates. And players still talk about a lot of ideas, like cruise missiles or hybrids, or I don't know, some advanced PvE operations. A lot of ideas, a lot of gameplay features. And the point is that almost all of these ideas are already sitting in our backlog somewhere, just waiting for their turn. So I think we'll have a lot of fun and engagement, even in 3 years.
Well, it sounds that way. I mean, I see that, World of Tanks is obviously a different game, but has some similarities, and that, they're a few years ahead of Warships in terms of development, and they just, you look at the number of tanks that, just more and more tanks get introduced, more variants, and I guess, and you're talking new ship classes. There's a lot of directions this game can go, but speaking from my point of view, and I think some of the folks who shared it with me, is that what we still really like. I mean, really two things. One is there's a certain patientness about this game, where it's not an FPS where you just walk in a room and you Leroy Jenkins and kill 10 of your opponents and the game's over, right? There's decisions you make minutes ago, or as many as 10 minutes ago, have a tremendous impact on how the battle's going to turn out. And the other is the original rock paper scissors dynamic of the interaction between the classes, and obviously CVs complicate that a little bit, but that the fundamental way that every move has a counter move, and that has a counter move, and that has a counter move. And it's all a lot of thoughtfulness to this game, and I think that that's part of what is allows this game to be sustainable for players. Is it's a little bit like you can, as a child, you learn to play chess, and you play it the entire rest of your life, and you may never get bored with it because it has those layers of complexity. Now, obviously, chess is something quite different from World of Warships, but it's when you think about the spectrum of at extreme end you have chess, which I think computers are just beginning to solve, and at the other end you have something like tic-tac-toe, which is comparable like to these FPS.
It's funny.
It's all Twitch skills.
Yes. It's actually funny because our game designers, when we were discussing the core gameplay, several times they did compare World of Warships with chess, as opposed to checkers, which are first-person shooters. Actually,
right, exactly.
That analogy actually works in the team, and I can assure you that the core gameplay, the core formula of World of Warships, nobody is going to change it significantly or remove it or change it to something entirely different, because this is how a game works, and this is how we got there to this. It works and it's successful, and it should stay the same, but it should also evolve.
That's understandable. That's
in an enjoyable way, but not into Fortnite, of course.
Right. It's a different game. So
yes.
On that, we have covered everything we want to cover. I hope that we're able to get you on sometime in the future to talk about, because there's really no substitute for Sub Octavian. When we've got important game-related questions, you were kind of the guy to go to, the person to talk to. And I just want to say, Bogsy had to step away, but I am very grateful for your generosity in coming on the show. I'll tell the audience is that we had a list of questions. We kind of, the topics at least, not the specific questions, but the topics we wanted to talk about. Sub-Octavian did not refuse a single question. So everything we wanted to ask, we were able to ask. That was extremely accommodating, even maybe slightly unexpected, not because Sub has anything to hide, but he's not just talking for Sub-Octavian. He is talking for a international multi-million dollar corporation. So we really appreciate you, and we appreciate you for being able to come on and take our, I'd say, some folks in our audience may not be happy that I didn't, come at you with a hard enough hatchet or a sharp enough hatchet, but I think we gave you a little bit of chin music, and I hope that I will say you acquitted yourself well, and I hope you didn't feel at any time like you were, that basically you were on a Reddit forum.
I genuinely enjoyed this, and when you asked me about the topics, and that's correct that I actually didn't refuse any single one, but that's not because all of them were super easy to talk about or they were not controversial. Actually, I think we discussed a lot of controversial things. Yes, we didn't dedicate 2 hours for complaining about how bad Smolensk is, but I mean, we discussed Puerto Rico and NTC. We discussed aim hacks. We discussed Russian business, which is actually much more dangerous than Smolensk, even in division, and stuff like this. But actually, I enjoyed this talk particularly because we had this interesting and deeper questions where I have a chance to take a look back and kind of acknowledge some things. And maybe I actually even reached some new conclusions while talking to you guys. So it was very amazing. Thank you for having me here. And last thing I wanted to say that I'm pretty sure that in 3 years we will have Italian battleship line. But maybe we'll have it earlier. Well, maybe, just maybe we'll have it earlier. Just you wait.
I'm looking forward to those SAP battleship shells wrecking me from across the map. On that note,
from the smoke, of course, from the special Italian smoke.
Of course.
Wait. Who actually led you to our design room?
We just had a feeling.
And on that note, I will wrap this up. I encourage you to subscribe and follow the Wargaming YouTube channel and Twitch channel, with our link below. As always, I invite you to the North American Clan Embassy, link below, discord.gg/thenewguys. And I appreciate you tuning into this podcast. We look forward to making many more for you, and we'll talk again soon.